All right, now I'm here with problem number 2 from the chapter 9 and 10 practice test. Excuse me. Number 2 says, we're going to solve this, or asks us to solve this quadratic equation. H squared plus 16h minus 24 equals 0. And we'll first notice that this is a quadratic equation because we have a variable squared. And if we're going to solve this quadratic equation for what the value of h is, we need to use the quadratic formula. And in order to use the quadratic formula, we need to be sure that our quadratic equation is equal to 0. And in this case, it is equal to 0, so we do not have to manipulate or change this equation at all. We can clearly see the values of a, b, and c with what's on the screen here. The value of a is going to be 1 because it's the coefficient of the h squared, or the variable squared. B is 16 because it's the coefficient of the variable to the first power. And then c is negative 24 because that is just a constant term without a variable. We're going to take these three values, plug them into the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Now we're going to do a little bit of simplification here. I'm going to simplify what's underneath the square root. So we have 16 squared. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do negative 4 times 1 times negative 24. So by doing that, I get 256. 256 comes from 16 squared. This plus 96 comes from negative 4 times 1 times negative 24. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 24 is a positive 96. So that's where the positive 96 comes from. And again, it's from here to here is where most mistakes are going to happen. So be very careful when you're doing that simplification. Now we have the square root of 256 plus 96, so I'm going to add these two things together to find out what I need to take the square root of, and I'll be taking the square root of 352 because 256 plus 96 is 352. I have no idea what the square root of 352 is, so I need a calculator. Turns out the square root of 352 is about 18.8. I'm rounding there, 18.8. So we do negative 16 plus 18.8 and negative 16 minus 18.8 because technically the square root of 352 is two different numbers. It's positive 18.8 and negative 18.8. So I'll simplify the left one here, negative 16 plus 18.8, that is 2.8. So I'm going to do 2.8 divided by 2 in just a minute here. And then I'm going to do negative 16 minus 18.8, that's negative 34.8 divided by 2. Simplifying the 2.8 divided by 2, I get a 1.4, and the negative 34.8 divided by 2 is negative 17.4. So our two solutions to this equation are 1.4 and negative 17.4. What that means is that if I take these two values and plug them in for h into our quadratic equation, our quadratic equation will be a true statement.